This is the spectacular story of Captain Julian Vance, a young man no one believed in, who shaped his own destiny, defying impossible circumstances to forge the most feared crew the ocean had ever seen. The story so far: Captain Julian Vance transformed a crew of inexperienced misfits into an elite pirate force. Julian and his men acquired a potent pirate ship. Julian successfully raided the naval armory to capture heavy ammunition. Julian now sets his sights on the ultimate prize and a daring rescue to get Finn back. As the pirate ship entered the harbour, a thick, unnatural fog rolled into the harbour of Port Royal, swallowing the massive naval ship's hull in a blanket of grey. This was no weather event, but a clever trick by Corin, the ship's cook turned chemist, who burned damp sulphur and wet wood on small wooden rafts. However, the rafts were not attached to Julian's ship as they appeared, but were drifting freely toward the naval fleet to create false targets. When the naval cannons fired blindly at the glowing rafts, they only scattered the burning sulphur, which thickened the smoke and completely blinded their own lookouts. Under this perfect cover, Julian and his strike team bypassed the heavily guarded main docks entirely and approached the fortress from the dangerous jagged cliffs at the rear. They did not climb with traditional ropes, but instead used the advanced muskets they had stolen from the armory as metal steps, jamming the strong barrels into the cracks of the rock face. Reaching the top of the steep cliff, Caleb prepared to fight the wall guards, only to find them completely unconscious on the stone floor. Elara, their elite navigator, had secretly visited the fortress days earlier, disguised as a lost merchant, and replaced the guard's lantern oil with a slow-burning sleeping potion. The strike team moved silently through the dark halls, heading straight for the central vault to rescue their quartermaster. They entered the massive stone room, but suddenly the heavy iron doors slammed shut behind them with a loud crash, locking them inside. Torches flared to life all around the room, revealing Admiral Blackwood and 100 heavily armed Marines waiting patiently in the shadows. Standing right beside the ruthless pirate hunter was Finn, looking down at the floor in completely obvious guilt and shame. Blackwood looked incredibly pleased with himself as he silently signaled his men to aim their weapons at the trapped pirates. The Admiral made it clear through his proud gestures and mocking expressions that he had fully anticipated Julian coming to rescue the traitor. Blackwood then proudly displayed a captured pirate flag, indicating that his massive naval fleet had already surrounded and boarded Julian's ship in the harbour. The trap was perfectly sprung, and Julian had seemingly lost his ship, his freedom, and his life in a single foolish moment of loyalty. Yet, instead of showing fear, Julian simply looked at the heavy iron shackles Blackwood ordered his men to place on the pirate's wrists and smiled warmly. The shackles were standard Royal Navy issue, the exact same locks Julian had forced his crew to practice picking blindfolded for months on end. Before Blackwood could even process Julian's complete lack of panic, a massive explosion rocked the entire island and shook the dust from the ceiling. The naval soldiers, who had confidently boarded Julian's ship in the harbour, realized too late that the vessel was completely empty of pirates. Julian had ordered Corin to pack the lower decks of their old ship with every barrel of gunpowder they possessed, turning their home into a giant floating bomb. The massive explosion instantly destroyed Blackwood's blockade, sending a wave of fire across the water that trapped the remaining naval ships in the ruined port. The shockwave violently shook the central vault, causing the surprised Marines to drop their weapons in sudden terror and confusion. In perfect practiced unison, Julian and his men smoothly slipped their hands out of their locked shackles in less than a second. Caleb lunged forward with incredible speed, but instead of attacking a soldier, he grabbed a wall torch and tossed it into a pile of sulphur dust Julian had secretly dropped on the floor. A blinding white flash filled the room, completely robbing the Marines of their sight and plunging the vault into absolute chaos. Without delivering a single deadly blow, the pirates quickly disarmed the blinded guards using close-quarters wrestling moves they had perfected on the ship's deck. When the smoke finally cleared, Admiral Blackwood found himself entirely alone, with Caelan holding a heavy blade firmly against the Admiral's back. Julian calmly walked up to Finn and patted the terrified boy on the shoulder, revealing the greatest trick of the entire night. Julian had always known Finn would break under pressure, so he had intentionally sent the boy to be captured, to draw Blackwood's entire army into this specific room. The central vault they were standing in was completely empty, serving only as a clever decoy to keep the Admiral distracted, while the real theft occurred. Because Blackwood had moved every single soldier to ambush Julian, the rest of the massive fortress was left completely unguarded and open. Using the defeated Admiral as a human shield, Julian and his men casually walked out of the empty vault and headed straight for the private naval docks. Their target was not the fortress treasury at all, but Blackwood's own pristine state-of-the-art flagship, which was already fully loaded with the Navy's collected gold for transport. The pirates marched onto the magnificent vessel without facing a single shot, easily taking control of the finest and fastest ship in the royal fleet. Julian then forced the angry Admiral and the confused Finn off the ship at sword point, leaving them stranded on the burning docks. As a final, brilliant insult, Julian tossed a heavy bag of real gold coins to Finn, loudly rewarding the boy for playing his part as a spy perfectly. This clever action completely convinced Blackwood that Finn was a master agent working for Julian all along, ensuring the Admiral would direct all his anger at the young quartermaster. As the magnificent new ship sailed out of the ruined harbour, Caelan walked up to the mountain of gold resting on the polished wooden deck. Julian Vance stood proudly at the wheel of his stolen flagship, no longer an underdog, but a pirate the world now took notice of. News of his brilliance spread far and wide. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next quest. A like and a subscribe will help us stay connected with you, also be a great source of encouragement for our team.